Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott lad.
Josh, my friend, DualShock, no it's not, DualSense things are out. I'm going to keep calling it the DualShock every now and then because I've been living with that name for the last 20 years. And now Sony have decided to go down the DualSense route. Basically, they put a bunch of examples of how the new technology, the new controller technology is going to work based on all the games that are coming to the PS5. And these uses range from like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, I didn't really think of that, to, well, yeah, obviously, to, oh, for God's sake. So we'll just, there's only one in the oh for God's sake category, but we'll get there. But I'm going to just run these down. So the opening with the cool stuff, one of the first ones is Spider-Man Miles Morales. They said that each individual move will feel different, and the example that they give is something that Miles can do called the Venom Blast, or maybe Peter Parker can do it as well. And they said as you hold down square, you'll feel Spider-Man's bioelectricity, has to be Miles Morales, bioelectricity crackle across the left side of the controller, culminating in the right on impact. What do you think?
It's like a Mexican wave of power, isn't it? Like I'm a big fan of that.
It's coming out.
Right, I like the idea. I'm going to take the piss a little bit, Scott, because it's quite a funny thing to kind of big up in such a way when we don't know the price or release date. But like on the one hand, I do think it has some really cool implementations, like that idea of feeling kind of the electricity like flow through the controller as it's flowing through Miles is cool. I like also that this explanation kind of borderlines on the meme of you're going to really feel like Spider-Man, you know what I mean? That overused phrase that was around when the Spider-Man PS4 came out. Yeah, I'm almost certain we used it as well. I feel like everyone was using that, but it's kind of like an extra element of it. But I feel like that could be really interesting. Like the idea of knowing where hits are coming from, even though like you would assume that you would know that anyway. But I like the idea. I've said that too many times. I do really like the idea though. Of it kind of helping for accessibility as well, you know, the fact that you don't have to solely rely on kind of like visuals to get you through a game. I feel like it has a lot of different ways it could be implemented rather than just it being, hey, this feels funky, I like the idea of this, it's really interesting.
Well, as you'll see, because it very much feels like Sony sort of did a whip round and just sort of said, look, we're going to put this thing out about how the adaptive triggers and the DualSense technology, the different ways that the controller can vibrate, we're going to do something on that, so do you guys want to pitch in? And some of the different devs went, oh, that's cool, you can do this. And then some people just went, yeah, it's more vibration, it vibrates stronger, and then it vibrates lesser, and that creates more texture for vibration. And part of me just doesn't, like, I always want to be Parappa the Rapper, but it's not always the case. And for me, I remember like growing up with when they brought the first DualShock in, and that was like, oh, it's going to feel like you're driving a car. It's going to give you like the feedback of, it's going to feel like when you have a collision, it's really going to hit you. And I was like, I'm playing circuit breakers. It's not changing it at all. We've had 6-axis, we've had the HD Rumble and the Switch. I hope it's not a gimmick. But anyway, there's quite a few more to get through. So another one is Deathloop. Bethesda's, they're published by Bethesda Arcane game. Or is it just Arcane doing that?
No, I think it's still published by Bethesda as well.
Yeah, and Deathloop, they said that the triggers themselves will actually physically jam on the controller when your gun jams in the game, which is cool, but also makes me think that someone will just force it through. They'll just sort of force the controller to do the thing that they want to do. I will follow that up with Ratchet & Clank, A Rift Apart. Insomniac mentioned one of the weapons called the Enforcer, which is a dual-barreled shotgun. Apparently, if you pull the trigger halfway down, you fire one of the barrels. Pull it all the way down, you'll fire the other, and about halfway through, there's a bit of a feedback, a bit of a pushback to sort of let you know that you're tapping into the other barrel of the gun itself. My question there is, though, why wouldn't you always fire both barrels?
Well, sometimes you don't need to, Scott. Have you ever played like Resident Evil and you've got two dudes coming your way? You don't want to fire both those barrels, have to put those slugs back in. And I actually think this is a cool idea, man, like especially when it comes to the gun jamming, because I'm a sucker for Far Cry 2 and I love it when guns jam in that game. So the idea of having that kind of, oh crap, like moment where you hit the trigger and it just doesn't go down, I think that could add like a kind of weird physical sensory experience that they're all touting here.
In Far Cry 2, when it was like, oh, there's sand in your gun and your pistol's not going to fire.
Yeah, it was when you like they all just jammed it. It was everyone hated it, but I really liked it. So I like to see that kind of implemented in a more physical way. I am here for it because these are oftentimes just gimmicks. But I like you, I want to believe, and I am often getting swept up in these things. I remember when the Xbox One came out and they were talking up the vibration in the triggers for that controller. And I've essentially, Scott, spent 7 years of my life lamenting the fact that the PlayStation 4 DualShock 4 doesn't have those vibrations in the trigger. I mean, it's got a nice light bar, it's got the little touchpad, but where are the vibrations, mate? I don't know. Why did they never put them in?
That's another one. That whole LED top of the controller thing, like, oh, that's going to revolutionize everything. Oh, look, when you've got a wanted level in GTA, it flashes like the police sirens. It's like they're coming after you. No, it's not. It's a small little light, and I want to believe there's more to it, but it's just sometimes there's a fine line. So far, all of these are really cool, or at least they'll sort of hopefully add to the gaming experience. Another two in the super cool bracket is Astrobot. The guy talked about wanting to implement a lot of stuff that will let you feel the world, and the examples are that when you're running on plastic, metal, sand, or water, they'll all feel drastically different based on the way that the controller, I guess, moves or vibrates or sort of give you pushback or whatever. That was their sort of example for that, which I like the idea of that implementation in a platformer. One of the coolest, though, is Gran Turismo 7 that said that they're using the triggers to push back on when you brake going around corners. So when you have like an ABS system kick in, anti-lock system kick in on the brakes themselves when you go into a drift, the controller will actually fight you as you're sort of like, it's going to give some sort of pushback when you're drifting around corners, which fundamentally adds to the feel of that game. So I like the idea of that stuff. That's the last one in the cool bracket. What do you think of the last two?
Yes, I think for like driving games especially, to have that kind of physical feedback, not only with the car itself that you're driving, but the environments you're driving on and the terrain you're driving on. I think that could genuinely benefit it quite a lot. Like it's almost having kind of like a driving wheel with the kind of, resistance that you get and stuff. So if you can kind of mimic that, same driving sensibility on a regular old controller, I think that if it's implemented well, like I'm a Gran Turismo fan now, Scott. I've got GT Sport, I'm looking forward to Gran Turismo 7. I've never been able to say that about this franchise, so with the added haptic feedback or whatever, I was never enjoyed it. I was more of a Burnout fan, but not the point. The point is, I'm looking forward to this, and I'm especially looking forward to it with these extra features in the controller.
Fair, very fair. So the next bracket down are the ones that, like I said, it's almost like Sony just did a whip round, and the ones that came back from these guys is just sort of like, yeah, it'll vibrate, but a bit more. And so this one is Ghostwire Tokyo said that they're going to have a wider breadth of vibration to create light textured nuances of holding a charge when, for example, if you're charging up a power, they can give you something like that, or they can give you a harder vibration if the weapon recoils. Pretty much could have assumed that. Horizon Forbidden West, very much the same thing. The DualSense wireless controller adaptive triggers will help us to make the weapons feel even more unique and satisfying to use. And to round that out, Demon's Souls said that the extra sensory feedback on the controller allows you to know that your attack hit home and that a perfectly timed parry was a success, so that you can react faster and more decisively. They also mentioned, which is kind of cool on the side, as a potential, it's kind of a little bit like the Miles Morales thing, that you will hopefully be able to feel what it's like to have the sensation of fire crackling away in your hand. Now, I want to believe that, but...
Yeah. See, that all sounds cool, but I'm almost certain that in the Demon's Souls one, they also said that it would make the fighting or the combat in the world like darker and grittier and more brutal. And I'm just kind of like, how does that translate?
Let me throw one other thing in, because the one sort of naff thing that I mentioned at the start is the other half of this Demon's Souls thing, which sort of made us laugh before we were recording. But no, they also opened their thing saying that all the sensory stuff makes the world feel grittier and darker. But after saying the thing about the fire and all the potentially cool stuff, they drop in, we can also turn the simple act of pulling a lever to open a gate into a sensory experience. This is something that Rumble could never do. And I was just, it's pulling a lever, lads. Like, what else could you do with that? It's just going to go, and that's going to be it.
Dude, like, if you can make me like feel excited about pulling down a lever, hit the lever, then by all means. If this is the missing ingredient to Demon's Souls that the remaster, the remake, is finally going to capitalize on, then maybe I'm the fool, Scott. Maybe I'm the fool. Maybe I don't need, these epic battles, this hardcore combat experience. Maybe I just need a little fella to start pulling a little lever in for it to vibrate. I don't know.
Maybe. I'll tell you what as well, I can't think off the top of my head if there are any levers in the entire Souls franchise. Maybe it just,
When you get an elevator, you have to pull the pull the little lever.
Oh, I suppose so, yeah. Well, apparently that's
doors.
going to feel, next gen.
Sick.
There is one other thing that in here that mentions they have the whole Sackboy's platformer thing coming up, and said that when you fire the grappling hook, it makes you feel like you're actually firing a grappling hook when you're in the weapon mode using R2. So there's a wide swath of things, but I can't help but sort of think back on when the 6-axis was the next big thing, and it's going to make you feel like you're in the game with the PS3, or even going further back, the original DualShock, and how that's going to make you feel like you're driving cars or whatever. What's your closing thoughts? I mean, to be honest, we're both pretty optimistic, but this sort of stuff, when it's all officially put out on the PlayStation blog and they're trying to sort of make people feel super excited, but it does feel a little bit, it's so close to cringe. It's so close. It's a very fine line.
Well, this is it, we've joked throughout this entire video, but I am quite optimistic about it. Like I said earlier, I'm a sucker for these kind of features, and I do think, I'm more convinced on the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers than I ever was for the 6-axis, or Sony trying to convince us that rumble wasn't even needed, you know what I mean? I feel like when it comes to the features that they're promoting here, like I do genuinely think they have a lot of potential if they're implemented well, but that's what it always comes down to. If the third parties are actually going to implement them well, if they're just going to be gimmicks for the first parties, and I love this feature in Infamous Second Son, if it's literally going to amount to you being able to spray paint things by holding your controller. Like
that was so good, though.
Remember that? Can you remember that?
Yeah.
That was bad.
Put the controller on its side, you shake it up a bit, and then you do a bit of the old trigger.
It's fine, but I feel like so many times we've had similar features hyped up before launch about how they're going to be the next big thing, and they're just not utilized. And that's coming from someone who loves the light bar and who loves the touchpad on the PlayStation 4.
You don't love the light bar.
I genuinely do. I like the way it illuminates my house when it's nighttime. I don't know. I lost track now. Don't know what I was saying. But yeah, it is
just
kind of
lost
like
in a world of gimmicks, mate.
It's almost cringe, especially when we've known about haptic feedback, we've known about the controller's features. That was one of the first things that we ever kind of like found out back in the Wired interview with Mark Cerny and stuff. So we've been talking about haptic feedback for a year, Scott, and we still don't have a release date, and we still don't have another games showcase, we still don't have a proper teardown, we still don't know about the UI, we still don't know about the price.
A price?
And it's like, I get it. I'm sold, Sony. You've talked me to death. You're like in the club. You're like that meme of the dude talking to like the girl in the club, and he's just chewing her ear off, and it's like, I know about this stuff. Tell me about something else, please. Please, please, please.
Maybe in a long enough timeline. I mean, look, at this stage, the year of our Lord 2020, we now know the next stage of level pulling tech, but we don't know how much money we're going to have to spend to do the damn thing. So yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of the potential utilizations of the DualSense going forward, and we'll sort of keep on top of stuff and see if they ever announce a price before the release date itself. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.